Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Tip Tuesday, where in this video we're going to be teaching you how to air out of a quarter pipe. So before we get too far into talking about the steps to airing out, the prerequisites, and anything like that, let's define what airing out means. Airing out of a quarter pipe is going straight at the quarter pipe, hitting the coping or hitting the top of the ramp, going into the air, spinning 180 degrees in the air and coming straight back down the path that you entered the quarter pipe in, thus airing out. Airing out means that you're airing out above the coping or above the peak of the ramp. Recently, there have been a few of you in the comments of the how to drop in and how to hit a spine videos requesting a video about how to air out a quarter pipe. I told you guys I would make it happen, so here's the video. And when it comes to airing out a quarter pipe, as far as prerequisites goes and the things that you want to learn before you try to air out a quarter pipe, really there's only two things that I would say you need to be able to do, or at least be comfortable with when it comes to riding before you try to air out a quarter pipe. Those things are just being comfortable on your bike in general and bunny hops. That's it. If you can bunny hop and you're comfortable on your bike, chances are you're gonna be fine trying to air out of a quarter pipe, and really there's nothing holding you back as long as you're comfortable with those two things. And while it would probably be helpful to be able to drop in on a quarter pipe before trying to air it out, only for the simple fact that being able to drop in means that you're pretty comfortable on your bike, it's not 100% necessary, and there's really no skills involved with dropping into a quarter pipe that you absolutely need when airing out a quarter pipe, aside from that little bit of added control that it might bring you. With all of that being said, let's get into the steps for airing out a quarter pipe. The first of those would be to find a quarter pipe. And I would say that any local skate park to you is going to have a quarter pipe that you can learn how to air out on. I'm at a prefab Woodward skate park right now with a 4-foot quarter pipe. And while this isn't absolutely ideal for airing out, it is a great quarter pipe for a beginner to learn how to air out on, because while it's somewhat mellow, it's also not super steep, it's not super tall, and it's really not that scary to hit this quarter pipe and try to learn how to air out on it. Another thing to consider when looking for a quarter pipe to learn how to air out on is that you want something that has coping, because the coping helps you get above the top of the ramp whenever you're airing out. I would even go so far as to say that trying to learn how to air out on a quarter pipe without coping, while it might not affect you at first in your journey to learn how to air out, it absolutely will inhibit you whenever you first go to try to get above the coping, as we BMX riders say when you're airing out, because when you get above the coping, that means you're actually airing out by definition. My recommendation for a quarter pipe to learn how to air out on would be a simple 4-foot quarter pipe, similar to the one we have beside us. And once you've found a quarter pipe that you'd like to learn how to air out on, and assuming that you've never tried to air out of a quarter pipe before, my recommendation for the next step would be to find a wedge of similar size to the quarter pipe that you're trying to learn how to air out on, hopefully at the same skate park. Here, luckily, we have a wedge that's the same height right beside the quarter pipe that we're teaching you how to air out on. So what I would recommend as the next step, and the first step that actually involves riding, is just taking a few minutes to roll up this wedge and trying to do a bunny hop and spinning yourself a little bit and riding back down the wedge. Just try this for a few minutes, and then once you're comfortable doing that, you can move over to the quarter pipe and do the exact same thing. Just roll part of the way up it. You can do what we call carving, which means going at the ramp at an angle rather than going straight at it, and just bunny hopping a little bit and trying to spin. You don't have to completely overdo this. It's just riding up the ramp a little bit, bunny hopping, trying to spin a little bit, and coming back down it. And the main trick to this is to turn your head whenever you're bunny hopping. And as you'll see in the examples that I've been showing, we're turning our head, and that's all you really need to think about, because when you turn your head in the air, your bike and your body follow your head in the way that you're turning. So you roll up the ramp, bunny hop a little bit, turn your head, and that's what's going to give you your rotation to spin you around and make you go straight back down the ramp. Look where you want to go. That is the next thing that you want to think about in this motion. You roll up the ramp, bunny hop, turn your head, and look where you want to go and spot your landing. It's fairly simple when you break it down that way, so just get comfortable trying this for as many tries as you think you should. Once you're comfortable rolling up the ramp and getting your rotation and spin down, and then comfortably coming back down the ramp, we can move higher and higher and higher. And as you move higher, you're going to get closer and closer to the coping. And the next step is to bring your front tire off of the coping to do your air out. This one is fairly straightforward. You're just trying to go up the ramp high enough to hit the front tire off of the coping and then spin your rotation and come back down. And here's why it's so massively important that we picked a ramp with coping to learn how to air out on, not only for the simple fact that you want to be comfortable on the ramp that you're trying it on all the way through trying it, but also because we want to do it all on the same ramp if we can to keep things as comfortable as possible. Bringing your front tire off of the coping is going to give you a little bit more pop, and it's just going to bring you that much closer to actually getting your bike over the coping in your air out. And in some cases, you'll be able to actually get your entire bike over the coping just from hitting your front tire off of it and doing your bunny hop that way. Carefully watch the examples that I'm showing on the screen right now to show when you want to try and time things out as far as your bunny hop and rotation goes, because this is when things actually become important in those regards. And as you can see here, my front tire is coming off of the coping as I'm going to pick up the bike and spin the rotation. And this is another thing, you're just going to want to take as much time as you feel you need to get comfortable with this process as far as going off of the coping with your front tire and getting your rotation to come back down goes. And once you're comfortable with this, we can move on to the last and what I think is the most crucial step in actually airing out your bike. And this applies to any quarter pipe that you try this on, and is also another reason why having coping on the quarter pipe that you're trying it on is so important. And this step is to bring your back tire off of the coping as well. We're just adding on to these building blocks to build up to this point to where we're taking both the front tire and the back tire off of the coping to give you the pop and bring you over the coping and actually make you air out. So as you can see on the screen, we're doing the same steps that we've been doing. We're rolling up the ramp, hitting the coping with our front tire and pulling off of it as we're doing our bunny hopping motion. And this time we're pulling back so that at the same time our back tire keeps rolling up the ramp and hitting the coping itself before we start to do the rotation. And by this time, once your back tire hits the coping, you're going to be sent into an air out. You're most definitely going to be over the coping. You're going to finish your rotation, turning your head, spotting your landing, looking exactly where you want to go, and then you're going to land and you're going to roll away. It's as simple as that. And this is one of those things where you should be able to do this at the same speed that you were hitting the ramp before at, just because this is more of a commitment issue than a speed issue. But either way, go as fast as you're comfortable with and just work up towards coming off of the coping with your front and your rear tire, as you've seen me do in these examples. And it's exactly the same on all quarter pipes with or without coping. The coping absolutely makes it easier, which is why I recommended at the beginning that you find a quarter pipe with coping before trying to learn how to air out. Another thing worth noting is just because I recommended that you do this all on the same quarter pipe from beginning to ending doesn't mean that you have to. And if you find yourself more comfortable trying to air out in different steps on different quarter pipes and different ramps, that's okay too, because sometimes you'll find that other ramps are more comfortable to actually try going out of the coping on, such as bigger ramps with more transition, just because a smaller ramp requires you to pull up and out harder and farther to go straight up. because whenever you hit a ramp like this one, it wants to push you forward rather than up and out the way that you need to in an air out. These are just things to keep in mind during the process. You can absolutely learn all of the steps to airing out all on one ramp, just like this one, a prefab, mellow, 4-foot Woodward ramp. There's no reason why you can't, but there's also no reason why you can't pick any other ramp that you want to learn this process. I would say that the most important steps when learning how to air out are 1, to be comfortable on your bike, 2, to turn your head whenever you're doing your airing out motion and your bunny hop motion off of the ramp, and 3, coming off of the coping with your front and your back tire whenever you're actually trying to air out of the quarter pipe. The number one issue that I see people have when they're trying to learn how to air out is that they're pulling off of the ramp too soon and not using the coping to their advantage. You want to make sure that you let your front tire come off of the ramp and then you wait long enough and you pull back enough so that your back tire can hit the coping or the peak of the ramp, and use every inch of it to your advantage so that you can pull off of it and actually be in the air. Once you're comfortable airing out a quarter pipe, you can start to go faster and faster and try to go higher and higher. The concept stays the same. You can also start trying to throw tricks into the mix and putting your own style into your air outs, the way that you see some of your favorite pros do in videos like Chase Hawk and Tom Dugan. They both have their own distinct airing out styles that only come with doing thousands and thousands of air outs. Literally, the more you do it, the more you can add into it and the more style you can throw into the mix. So with that being said, that's just about gonna wrap up this how to air out of a quarter pipe video. I hope that you learned something and found this video useful. If you did, or you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below. I make tips and tricks videos every Tuesday with BMX news videos on Fridays and other types of riding videos throughout the week. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.